That's right. Walter Bosley's live again. Welcome, everyone, on this. We're going to call this an extra episode. The Malia and Walter show will be back tomorrow night. So you get us 2 nights in a row. And on a Sunday through Saturday calendar, you get us 3 times this week. Thought you'd appreciate that. Let's go to the live chat and welcome everyone who's there. Marshall is the very first one in tonight. Welcome, Marshall. Jackpot is here. Nick N, Megalithic Yard, Philip Blair, Johnny Side, and Jay Wink. So let me see what I got going here. Okay, Infinite Duality is here also. Oswald Spengler. Yes, they pile in because Walter Bosley channel is live again. Oregon Music Fan, hello, hello. Oh, tomorrow, talking True Detective Season 4. Ooh, okay. Todd Wood and I are thinking about talking about that in a special extra episode this coming week, maybe Tuesday after we both watch the second episode. And Eric Harper is here. Okay. Well, I want to jump in and get started. Tonight's topic is something that is one of my favorites. It is near and dear to my heart, and that is, well, time, right? Landscapes in time. Specifically how they appear in dreams, possibly in death. These dimensions that the main human interface is our consciousness, right? Now, you know me. I generally shy away from the tedious conversation about consciousness because most of those conversations are all about marveling over the fact that we are conscious beings. Okay, we're conscious beings. Get over it. Deal with it. Use it. Okay? You're a conscious being. Yeah, I understand that can be fascinating the first 1 or 2 times you talk about it. But I like to have the consciousness conversation in a little bit more of a, I don't know if you want to call it utilitarian or applied consciousness, right? And I really do think that the human interface to other dimensions is our consciousness. So I think that the personal UFO experience is definitely connected to the individual's consciousness. Now we have a fan blowing in here. I think I better turn that off because I don't know. It looks like it's registering on the microphone. I'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, it'll be turning off here shortly. One of my many fans, Megalith, says, yeah, I better click out of the live chat or I'm going to be distracting myself. So as I said, UFOs. I'm moving a little too much. Oh boy, my camera's out of focus. I really botched this up tonight, technically. Let me see if I can fix this here. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to. Sorry, folks. I'm a little out of focus tonight. So, yeah, as I said, the human consciousness is the human What's that? I'm a little out of focus. I botched everything up tonight. Oh, there we go. Oh, did I not have it on the right tapes? Oh, okay. That still looks. Maybe I need to do the. There we go. That's you. Take a look at this. Tell me what you think. You don't have to get in front of the camera if you don't want. Looks okay. All right. Thank you so much. Millie's a little under the weather this evening, so she's taking a night off. And but fortunately, she comes out and helps me with the tech. As I said, this landscapes in time thing. Why do I go back to this? Well, I don't. I'm assuming that most people have had many, if not all, the weird experiences I've had. I'm very egalitarian about these things. I do not think I'm special for having these experiences, but when we do have them, for each of us, they are special, the experiences themselves. And that's because, well, in my mind, these experiences bring us the closest to full spectrum reality than we get in our day-to-day lives here, so to speak. Now, I've also suspected, as many others have, that the places we dream about are places that we are living other lives. In other words, those places we go to in a lot of our dreams, those are the places where we live, where we're awake while we're sleeping here. That's the idea. That's what I have suspected. Now, there is, for instance, a particular, I call it a city that I have gone to more than once in my dreams. It seems to be the same place. Every time I go there, I know it as that one place. It has a fairly uniform. When I say uniform architecture, I don't mean that all the buildings are the same, all the structures are the same. What I'm saying is that it's uniform in its style, in its materials, right? And it's very much like the painting. If you look at the graphic for this episode, go back and look at the graphic that I posted, you'll see that there is a painting that was done to promote the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. And it is very much like a huge building that I have seen in more than one dream. Now, when I've seen it, it's usually daytime. I don't see it in the nighttime. And it's across a flat plain. And I'm usually looking at it through the large, conservatory type windows of a library that I go and visit. I'm not getting into, whether this is the Akashic Library or anything like that. It's just, it's within the context of the dream. It's a library, what we would call an old-fashioned library, like from the turn of the 19th and the 20th centuries, or very, very early 20th century. And I've been there more than once. And not just there, but the hallmark of the interesting thing about this, and which I think lends a great deal to the idea of, well, this is just the life we're living when our bodies in this one are asleep, is because mundane things happen. It's not like it may look visually spectacular, but the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm experiencing are rather mundane. They might get annoying as life here does, but there's no extraordinary thing happening beyond the vivid image that I'm seeing, and how real it feels and such. So, is this another dimension in which my mind lives in another body while this body is sleeping? Or is it a landscape across time? Am I literally in a place from 130 years ago? Would it be a memory, like past life memory kind of thing? Or is it where I'm alive during my sleeping time here, but in another time in that place? The idea that we've all heard, you're all fans of True Detective Season 1. And he talks about time as a flat circle and all that, right? Well, my mentor, he taught me that time is circular. But I personally came to a conclusion, or an epiphany, or whatever you want to call it, a thought, in 2006. In a very interesting conversation, by the way, that included Greg Bishop and Bill Moore. Yes, Bill Moore. And as a result of that conversation, it came to me that time isn't just circular, it's spherical. You guys have heard me talk about this. It's spherical. And I thought, well, what if all timelines, all eras, let's say, on the great big time sphere, once it comes into existence, once a civilization, an era, it comes into an existence, it exists forever. So let's say that, the sphere is constantly expanding, right? It's ever growing. The idea is that somewhere on the sphere, the Old West still exists, ancient Rome still exists, and on and so forth. So when we're sleeping here, okay, in January 2024, are we then jumping over to the life that we may be living in 1893? This is what I've wondered about this interesting dream issue. Now, the land of the dead, I think it's very much like a dreamscape. Let me rephrase that. Very much like what we identify as a dreamscape. Okay, now let's say, for the sake of discussion, that a so-called dreamscape really is, this other dimension that exists. Okay, our minds never shut down. Our bodies sleep, but the mind doesn't shut down in this idea, this exercise. And it goes to one of our other bodies, which implies that we exist in more than one place at once. Well, I think that's an idea that's been around for a long time, right? So what if some dreams aren't dreams at all. And if that's the case, people have asked, well, what if death is not a real thing as the materialists know it? A materialist says, oh, when I die, my body dies, my consciousness dies with me, and I cease to exist. I'm reduced. I cease to exist. Speak of me well, until you die and cease to exist. And then everybody I know, forget is all dead and the world forgets about me. And that's it. No more. I had my time. Well, I don't think that way. Me personally, I've been convinced enough for me to not agree with that conclusion, that the materialist point of view of life. I question these things. You guys know that. I have talked about my experience in writing this novel, I Will See You in Time. And this novel really happened because of a trip I took with a family member to San Francisco in late 2007 and met up with our good friend Zealotry. And he took me around to visit certain spots where the telluric current is more intense, right? Where there are select, very important spots on the telluric current pattern, such as he identifies geographically. And I did have some really interesting experiences there. So did he. I've talked about those before elsewhere. But probably the most extraordinary thing was on the drive home when I seemed to get a download. It just an understanding of certain things in my life just seemed to come all together. And I understood them. There was clarity. And it had everything to do with, San Francisco history, and having gone to those spots that Zealotry took us to. Now, I had to get documented what came to me in like a burst transmission within just a moment or two. The whole picture, the understanding of it was understanding a past relationship, a connection to places and such. And I had to document it. So I made my notes as soon as I could. And as soon as I could stop, pull off the road, made the notes. And then I decided, you know what? I need to write about this. I need to tell this story. But there were other things coming to me through remote viewing, through investigation. And this book ended up being, it really was the product of my Empire of the Wheel investigation, my Juan Cabrillo research, and this burst transmission from whatever, the ether, whatever you want to call it. And so I put all of that into a story, and that ended up being my time travel novel. So that experience, it was intense on this intellectual level. And it was in a period of my life when I had been doing remote viewing daily for 3 months at that time, daily. Okay, I've got a stack of remote viewings that I did every day, numerous ones. because I had just learned a particular, protocol of SRV, coordinate remote viewing, I guess is what it is. And as you guys know, because I've talked about it elsewhere, a lot of weird stuff was coming to me that led to the Empire of the Wheel research and investigation, but it also gave me glimpses into the Juan Cabrillo mystery, and that ended up resulting in the book Secret Missions, the first Secret Missions book. But this was all this mysterious stuff, imagery, impressions, weird threads and leads, all coming to me through the remote viewing and through synchronicity. Synchronicity just went off the charts for me in the fall of 2007. Just, Seshari could tell you, because I was telling him about it all along. And it really, in a lifetime of strange events, strange experiences, it was really the most intense period. So my mind was blown by all this strangeness and the thing that it was pointing to mostly. And that involved, as you know, the goddess Hecate. And it took me a while, about 7 years exactly, for, talking a lot, working a lot through this with Seshari. And in 2014, he wrote me a series of letters. There were 3. He sent them. He didn't want to put it all in one letter, but these are the letters that I have alluded to before. The letters relating to our ideas of time and time travel, including analyses of literature and movies in question. The result of which was that we concluded that the authors, Jack Finney and Richard Matheson, had figured out some real things about time and dimension and time travel, things like that, at least developed a method. But it really wasn't until, those letters and some very interesting, weird experiences associated around the time that I got the letters from Sesh, that Hecate kind of stepped forward with her presence in what I was doing. Now, mind you, I've never, I don't reach out to Hecate. I don't, pray to her or anything like that. I just acknowledge the presence and the existence. I think that's enough. At least in my experience, it has been enough to see a little bit of the veil lifted. What does that mean? That means, well, the more you experience whatever the phenomena is, whatever she is, the more you understand. That's what lifting of the veil means. Okay. Now, I had a very intense dream during the time that I was receiving these letters. And one of those dreams had me in the Smiley Library in Redlands. And this library had, where I was in the library, is a corridor that's not running straight through the building. It runs the perimeter. Okay. And so I'm there. I'm in the corner where the 2 corridors meet, right here. And there's like a little alcove there. And I'm standing back out of the way of a line of people that are filing past me. They're going from point A to point B. And they're wearing clothes from, what was at that time a little over 100 years before. Now, this was 2014. And I'm watching them go by. And in that line are two women who are twins. And they're in their 50s. That's how they appeared to me. Very elegant looking women. If you're a stickler for what era we're talking about and the fashion and the way these people were dressed, think America between 1900 and 1910. I think that's the Edwardian era. So, the ladies had their hair up and such. Well, nobody in this line was noticing me. But the two ladies did, the twins. As they walked past, one of them looked at me, the other one looked at me, and, the one nodded, acknowledging that I was there with a little smile, and then turned back and, was having her conversation with her twin. And that was, what I remember about that particular dream. Now, subsequent to that, I think it was just, it was the very next day, actually, that I received one of the letters from Sesh. And I had the experience where I went to the grocery store, and you know how they have music playing at the grocery stores, and there was a particular song, and I had this weird, almost giddy reaction to it. And I sensed that I was right about a conclusion. And a conclusion at that time had to do with Hecate and her role after we die. And I felt like, okay, I'm right about this. And there's something in this song communicating that to me. Okay, this is crazy shit. All right, I'll bite. So I had read that letter, and in that letter was a visual representation of a concept that Sesh was explaining to me. And it involved very specific visual object, okay? And it involved it in a triple function, or the movement and the function of this visual object involved 3 stages that this thing can be observed. Well, when I got home from the grocery store and went online and pulled up the video for the song in question that had been playing, there were 3 shots in a row at one point of the identical object. Now, this is a music video from the 1980s, but there it was, the exact figure from the letters that Sesh had used these figures as a way to explain, the function of this particular thing he was talking about that has to do with time, your place in time. Now that, folks, is kind of what we would call a synchronicity. Okay. And I'm watching this video and boom, 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 there's the shape and 3 shots in a row of this thing. And in Sesh's letter, the same thing, 3 times. Now, 3 is the main number of Hecate. She is the triple-faced goddess. So things in 3s, within this context I'm talking about, tend to be a reflection of Hecate, her presence in something, her hand in something. It's her foot stomper. Okay, and that was a big foot stomper. So I began to look more seriously at my idea that Hecate, who is she's the goddess at the crossroads, the queen of the entry to the land of the dead. You go into the underworld, more specifically the underworld. You go into the underworld, she is there at the gate, so to speak, and she has her torches. usually two, and that's a reference to the Persephone myth. When Persephone is abducted into the underworld and her mother begs Hecate to find Persephone and bring her home, back to the land of the living. So she carries her two torches, goes to the underworld, finds Persephone. You can read the lore on that, because it's explained, why Persephone then will spend half the year in the land of the living and half down in the underworld. But anyway, that's the lore of her role in the underworld. But she stands at a triple crossroad. And I was thinking, triple crossroad. She stands at the junction of a triple crossroad. And she greets us. She's there to guide us through the underworld, which is, the metaphor for land of the dead, where we go after we die, right? And I thought, well, this discussion on time and dimension, time travel, this involves Hecate. And in the study of the telluric current, intersections are very, very important. And other researchers have pointed out that at the intersection of these telluric currents, or ley lines as they're kind of incorrectly called, but referred to as, there has been reported strange phenomena, be it paranormal, UFOs, whatever. And there seems to be an abundance of reports of strange goings on at the intersections of these currents, of these lines. So I thought, well, those intersections have included things like portals, interdimensional portals. I discussed that in Latitude 33, my book on the esoteric engineering of Disneyland. So clearly time and dimension have their connection to the intersections of these telluric currents, these lines. What if this triple crossroad is actually the intersection of interdimensional currents, right? Okay, that would include time. So when you die, and there's Hecate standing there, and she's standing there at a triple crossroad, might that triple crossroad just simply be time? Past, present, and future. Present meaning you're dead. You're standing there now in front of her. That's where you're at. The other one, the past, your past. The future, your future. Now, what could we consider about that? Well, the future line, she stands at this triple crossroad. If she gives you a choice. This is my hypothetical, okay? She gives you a choice, okay? You can stay here in the land of the dead. That's the here road. Just stay in the land of the dead, the underworld. Or you can take the future road and go on to your next life. Be that a reincarnated life, or, whatever heaven is, so to speak, right? But the past road could be hypothetically, you go back and relive part of the life you just ended. And this seemed interesting to me. It seemed reasonable. Because again, the interface, okay, by which we can reach these other dimensions or reach across dimensions, and that includes time, is the human consciousness. Okay? Our bodies, We might never be able to build a machine like in the movies and in books where we can, hit a button, pull a lever, and, we go back in time or return forward in time. Okay. Now, we might not, but as soon as you say, somebody says that probably won't be done, it probably will be done. And some people say UFOs, a lot of UFO experiences are really just that, time travelers from the future. A lot of books have been written about this. People have talked about this for a while. But the one way we all can do this, travel through time, I think, would be at the crossroad of Hecate. And what Hecate is the one who is the guide to greet you. Is arbiter a right word? She's the gatekeeper. She facilitates if you go back and relive, your own life. Now, I've had an idea that, I've wondered, have I done this myself? Why would I wonder that? Well, you guys have heard me talk a little bit about this, that I had that experience in December of 79. Notice December turns up in this. In December, I went to San Francisco in 2007 and had that weird experience up there and had kind of my eyes open to new concepts and a little bit more of the spectrum of reality. And years before that, in December of 79, I had my intense enlightenment, awakening. Literally, I woke up one morning, looked at my hands, and I thought, these hands aren't mine. Went around the house, and it was real weird. Well, I've since, as you know, thought about that more quite a bit, and thinking, well, of course, these hands aren't mine. It wasn't that they're not mine. It's that I hadn't seen those hands in a long time. I was 16 in December of 79. So it was my 16-year-old hands. Because I got up, and as I walked through the house, I recognized my sisters, my mom and my dad, and our family dogs in the house and everything. But it was that I was reacting to seeing them. It was, whoa, there they are. Well, I wondered about that. What the heck could that be? For decades, a couple of decades or so, I wondered, what was that? What happened to me? Well, eventually, after the letters of Sechery and our lengthy discussions about time and dimension and all my experiences with Hecate and synchronicity during the Empire of the Wheel investigation and all this stuff, I came to a hypothesis that I had jumped back into my younger self. It's a hypothesis, folks. Certainty fetishists, if you have a certainty fetish, being pedantic here at the Walter Bosley channel is just the wrong direction to go. Okay. It's hypothesis. And my hypothesis is that an older version of myself, when I died, came to the triple crossroad, so to speak. Hecate offered me the choice. I could stay there in the underworld. I could go forward into my next life, existence, whatever. Or I could go back into the life that I just led. And for whatever reason, I have my ideas. I chose to come back. That's interesting, I thought, as a hypothesis. And it explains the experience that I had back in 79 better than anything. Sechery himself says I was abducted. I've always disagreed with that. I disagree with it now. I'm not convinced that I was abducted by aliens. There's nothing about the experience that says to me, aliens, okay, or UFOs. it explains the deja vu, so to speak, that I had and had after that. It explains to me, as I would then again move forward through this same life that I'm still in, um, that it explains me recognizing people whom I ostensibly was just meeting. Okay, it's like, I know you. I've, you know, so not so much past life from centuries ago, which certainly I'm open to that, but those experiences where I've been here before, we've been here before. Now, why would someone do that? Well, duh. Everyone thinks about those moments, those times in their lives, where they would go right instead of left, maybe, just try a different choice, to see how it turns out, right? Well, numbers got into it, and I have a particular speculation about the transposition of numbers. The idea that um, my first time through this life, that I had died at 61 years old. So I was able to jump back into my 16-year-old body, right? 61, 16. Switch them around. You see, you get the idea. And so then I thought more on that. I thought, well, wait a minute then. If I reach 72 and decide to go back, I could go back to my 27-year-old self, working for the FBI, the year my son was born. Is there anything that I would do different? If I make it to 81, I'll jump back to my 18-year-old self, right? That's the idea. You get the concept. Again, all this made possible because what we are and who we are is the human consciousness. Okay. And that can be plugged into whatever body. We possess ourselves, is what I'm trying to say. We are possessed, and we possess ourselves. So that's a bit of my experience with personal experience with my suspicions of my personal experience with time and dimension. There's also another suspicion that I've had that you guys have heard me talk about the night in Iraq, when I thought that perhaps me and the other two guys I was working with, we got killed. And, I've been in kind of a weird hell ever since, or, yet another dimension that perhaps at the moment that the bullets were flying out of those AK-47s, we were in Mosul, Iraq, and it was after midnight, and we were dressed like Saudis. We had keffiyehs and jalabiyas on, and we were in a little local type car, no armor. Okay. Rounds could have, like the proverbial hot knife through butter, could have just riddled that car and wiped us out. And yeah, we had weapons on us. I had an M4 with the collapsible stock between my knees underneath the, trying to cover it up, because team leader said, don't let them see the guns. We were surrounded by like 9 guys with AKs. And talk about time stretching. And, I've wondered, okay, knowing that I was going to die right then, was I able to throw my consciousness onto an alternate track of my existence? And the consciousness in this body that I've been living with since that night in November of 2003 is not in the track, the physicality that it started in this very same life. Okay. In that other track, I was, shot to death, but I managed to jump. That's the idea. That's the speculation. I've wondered that, and there's reasons for that. It's a whole other conversation. Now, in exploring these ideas. As I said, I'm very egalitarian. I don't think I'm special. I am by no means the only guy who can do this if it's possible. I'm by no means the first person to ever think about these very things I'm talking about. Okay. Even if I haven't read these specific things in other people's ideas, there's things that have been very similar enough. And anyway, I don't assume that I'm the first one to think of these things. So I started looking for, any kind of evidence or sign that, other people might understand these same things. And certainly that made me think of Jack Finney and Richard Matheson, the two authors, because they both wrote classic time travel novels in which the protagonist does just that, casts the consciousness across time and dimension, across time and space. Okay. Now, dramatically, it's presented as they even are able to transport their physicality, their body, back in time. Okay. And that's okay, because in a dramatic telling of time travel, it's just easier to have the guy, or gal physically, the body and everything. But what if more realistically, not realistic, more in a more practical manner, throwing the consciousness, works best. Now, do you throw, let's say you go back 100 years, all right, anywhere from 50 to 100 years, like in the Jack Finney story, or Richard Matheson's Somewhere in Time. Do you just possess a random body where your consciousness lands? Or is there a you in a past life where you physically lived in that time, and then what you do is, because of whatever coding goes on this level, you naturally then possess that body that was yours. And then that brings us back to my idea that time is spherical. So are you just throwing your consciousness from this point on the sphere, which is the year in question that we're talking about, say this year, 2024, are you just then casting your consciousness to the body that was yours on this other point in the sphere that still exists? It's a linear fashion, linearly. There's it's that place that in the straight line was in the past, what we call the past. But again, once you come up to a certain point, the past, it exists. Okay. It exists in memory. It exists in documentation, right? Record. And now, visual documentation like photography and such. So hypothetically, if it exists somewhere on the time sphere, it can be reached, is my point. If it exists somewhere, if it's a point on that sphere, then therefore it can be reached from another point on that sphere. You just got to know how to do it. And in Jack Finney's work, the characters know how to do it. Richard Matheson's work, Somewhere in Time, the character figures out, learns how to do it. Well, where did these guys get these ideas? Did they have these experiences? Did they learn it from elsewhere? Well, you go back to long before these guys were ever around to write, there were other writers who talked about very similar things. And I talk about them in one of the books. So that got me to thinking and being open to the idea that, okay, somebody knows what's going on here. And I remember in the mid 1990s, when I had first started really seriously wondering about, okay, now as crazy as this sounds, is time travel real? Is it possible? Such. And I had asked my mentor, you guys have heard me talk about my illustrious mentor, my uncle. I had asked him before, could the UFOs, I've read and heard that, UFOs could be something other than people from another world. Could they be time travelers? And he wouldn't talk to me about it. He goes, you're not ready to hear about that. Well, that's intriguing. Definitely intrigued me. And then a few years later, I asked again, and all he said to me was, time travel is something that they figured out 100 years ago. Now, this was in the 1990s. He told me this, so that would have been the 1890s. And again, you guys have heard me talk about that before. So for years, that idea was in my head, and I thought, oh, okay, 1890s, according to him. I mean, could this be a load of crap he was, telling me to see if I would be gullible enough to go talking about it with others, or sharp enough to say, okay, this is a test to see how gullible I am. I'm not going to go blabbing about this to other people. They'll think I'm nuts. Or was he, telling the truth? Well, I always, looked to the 1890s, for that reason. There's, of course, H.G. Wells' time travel novel. So, this was in the public psyche, zeitgeist, the idea of time travel. It had been before H.G. Wells, believe me. But, his is famous, his time travel novel, The Time Machine. And so that being in my mind that, gosh, he said someone in the 1890s had figured this out, so there's the whole issue, you learn more about Tesla and you think, Nikola Tesla, okay, what did he figure out? And then along came learning about Ingersoll Lockwood. And through the Ingersoll Lockwood research, now, because we talked about it not too long ago, Ingersoll Lockwood writes these books with uncanny accuracy in names and other interesting synchronicitous details regarding Donald Trump and, mostly his son. But what's really weird is the detail, the depiction of images of the character Baron Trump, who is the hero of these novels written in the 1890s. And in one illustration in particular, he looks identical to the son of Donald Trump, Baron Trump. So the name, the face, at how Baron looked in particular in between 2016 and 2018. 2015 to 2018 during the campaign and the election when Trump got elected. So, I thought, okay, well, who illustrated these books? And that's how I learned about, Todd and I learned about Charles Howard Johnson, who I've talked about before as well. So as you know, we think that Charles Howard Johnson had figured out something about, if not traveling through time, looking through time. Okay. Again, I go back to the, speculation that the idea that the interface through time, multiple dimensions, is human consciousness. Okay. It seems like at least looking through time or seeing across time, getting glimpses of a future, might even be easier than actually, traveling through time before you're dead. I personally think that once you die, you're given the choice. You want to do it? Yeah, okay. And the next thing you know, you're waking up going, "Oh, these aren't my hands." That was the experience. But uh, there's reason to suspect, there's reason to allow yourself to enjoy the hypotheticals of the discussion on who Charles Howard Johnson really was, and whether he really did understand something about time, traveling through time and stuff. And Todd and I go into that, in this book. But also in this book is the story of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the great American poet. And there have been other scholars, a French scholar, I believe, in particular, I think it's French, who has noted the connection between Longfellow, some of his writing, and his tomb, his personal gravesite, crypt, tomb, whatever, his tomb, with Nicolas Poisson's paintings of the three shepherds, popularly known as Et in Arcadia Ego. When you look at that painting, which, by the way, predates Longfellow by centuries, few centuries, you see a tomb. Okay, there's a lot of overgrowth on it, and there's a skull sitting on top of it, and it's a horned tomb, meaning at each corner there's this horn shape. Now, Joseph Farrell told me to pay attention to the horned feature on the tomb and look into that. And to this day, in true Joseph Farrell fashion, I don't know if he's here tonight or not, he's yet to explain fully what it is I'm supposed to be finding. Eventually he will, when I've completed my homework, and I'm certain to, ask him particular questions that will tell him, he's done his homework. So I'm still looking into that. But here's what I found when looking into Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I found that his family, his extended family, they had a family crypt in a particular cemetery. And it was subsequently discovered. Now, I think it was, I'd have to look in here. Let me see. I think it was like his mom, his sister, the brother, and some nephews and nieces, or whatever. Let me see. Here is, whoops, sorry. There's Longfellow's personal tomb right there. Okay. See the horns up on the corners? Right there. Now, this picture right here, you see a row of crypts. Okay. Now, that's one of those crypts belonged to his family. And there came a time when it was discovered that the crypt is empty. The bodies are not there. We talk about in the book that, okay, perhaps they were moved to another cemetery. But my understanding is, let me get this right, I don't want to misspeak. Yeah, just what I was going to say. Nobody knows where their bodies are to this day. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was a 19th century man. His family were contemporaries of his. If their bodies aren't in their crypt, where are they? Now, I wonder if Edgar Rice Burroughs was aware of this little mystery, and that inspired the bit in John Carter of Mars, in which John Carter is entombed in the special tomb that only locks and unlocks from the inside. And if you're familiar with the Carter of Mars series, you know why. He's jumping back and forth between Earth and Barsoom across the vastness of space. Well, across the stretch, the span of space in between Earth and Mars. Was Burroughs inspired to write that by knowing about this mystery about the Longfellow family crypt being empty? So now I have to ask, has anyone opened Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's tomb to check if the body's there? It's a pretty hefty tomb. And in a discussion about time and dimension, why was it recommended to me to pay close, special attention to the horned aspect of the tomb? I don't know. Is the tomb the dimensions, say, of the Ark of the Covenant, which we know is a mystical object and has particular dimension and description to it? I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. But the scholar who has pointed out, let me see. It's in the book. Anyway, the scholar that has pointed out the resonance with the Et in Arcadia ego painting and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, it seems to connect to his epic verse story, Evangeline, which is a story about North America's Arcadia. The French refugees who came to North America and were in what is today, northern New England and southeastern Canada. And they were forced out by your friends and mine, the British Empire, of course. It was a forced diaspora, and many of them ended up coming around into the Gulf of Mexico and up through Louisiana via New Orleans. And this is where Cajuns come from. Okay, this is the origin of the Cajuns, these Arcadians, Cadians, Cajuns, the way you pronounce it. You just kind of run it all together. Arcadians, Acadians, Cajuns, Cajuns. You get it, okay? Now, there's the discussion also in the Ingersoll Lockwood book that Leonardo da Vinci even might have known about a particular area of North America, okay? And might have included it in his paintings, possibly even the Mona Lisa, because there's question about the landscape, behind her in the background. And then there's Nicolas Poisson's paintings, which could be some landscapes in North America, specifically the North American Arcadia. Okay. This speaks to prior knowledge of the Americas, before Columbus, right? There's good reason to suspect that Columbus knew what he was going to find in 1492 because he might have been here in 1485. Okay. So, this goes back, this ties into the cartographic tradition. So, Longfellow he writes this poem Evangeline about, Arcadia, the Arcadian diaspora and such. And he, lives his life, and he ends up in this tomb that is virtually identical. Let me double check this again. To the tomb of the dead man in the Nicolas Poisson paintings. Let me see. There's multiple versions of it. Well, now in this here, it's lacking the horns from what I can see here. Now, basically, the interpretation is there is a mysterious woman. If you look at the painting, and there's more than one version of the three shepherds, and in the original, of course, this woman is prominent. Who is this woman? It's not explained. This female figure. And you have a young man, a middle-aged man, and an old man, and you have a skull. Well, basically, it's supposed to be, the same individual, the dead individual who's in that crypt, and what you're seeing is him at different stages of his life. 3 stages of his life. Now, yeah, the skull is there, which some people would say, well, that's the 4th stage. But you get the idea. The embodiment of this man in life is the 3. Okay. Well, this is the same symbolism put on Hecate, right? She's the maiden mother crone, young woman, middle-aged woman, old woman. In this case, you have the shepherd as a young man, a middle-aged man is prime, and then an old man. Okay. So who is the lady in the painting? I say it's Hecate. He's at the crossroad. This represents the crossroad for the shepherd who has died. Okay. And he has his choice, past, present, and future. And this is symbolized through images of him in his youthful past, his prime past, and his what would have been his future, young, middle-aged, old. You guys get the idea. And Hecate was there to say, you want to go back to your young self, you want to go back to your middle-aged self, you want to keep going, what is it? What's going on here? What do you choose? That kind of thing. So wait a minute. Wait. I had a point that the painting brought up. Basically, in Arcadia, ego means I am to be found in Arcadia, or there go I. So, did Longfellow, the point of all this that I'm trying to get to, I'm stumbling through, is did Longfellow learn something about what I'm talking about the underworld, the land of the dead? Did he learn something about physically moving into other dimensions, a la Jack Finney's novel, Time and Again, Richard Matheson's novel, Somewhere in Time? Is Longfellow's body in his crypt? Where are his family? Where are those bodies? Did he teach them this? Did they slip into some Arcadia of another dimension, another time? It's very intriguing. It's particularly intriguing when you find that Rennes Le Chateau, which we'll be talking about on the 31st of January with Renee Barnett. She'll be the guest here. Rennes Le Chateau is tied up in all of this because Et in Arcadia Ego is to be found. You just keep the darn book open, right? to be found on the headstone, cemetery stone of Madame de Hautpoul. And Madame de Hautpoul was a relative of Colonel Hautpoul. And Colonel Hautpoul was an officer serving under Napoleon Bonaparte and was one of two men who allegedly stumbled upon the Rosetta Stone, the dimensions of which match the headstone of Madame de Hautpoul, which says Et in Arcadia Ego. What's going on here? Napoleon's in the mix. I don't think it was an accident that they stumbled upon the Rosetta Stone. You know that I report in my book, The Esoteric Napoleon, the suspicion of others that the Rosetta Stone had been found elsewhere. And that was a story concocted as to, oh, gee, where they found it. I also agree with the idea that others have presented that the Rosetta Stone was translated before we're told it was. And this guided the French savants who went over there with Napoleon in archaeological investigations, the details of which we still don't know about to this day, and probably contributed to why Napoleon was so hated and feared. He was hated because he was feared, and not feared for the reasons that you've been popularly taught. So then, since we're talking about this weird stuff, tombs and death and other dimensions and, crossing time and space, there's the story of Napoleon in the pyramid. I go into that in Esoteric Napoleon. It's by no means original with me. In fact, the story of Napoleon in the pyramid, is what intrigued me about Napoleon Bonaparte years ago, and was the thing that kept me, and made me, want to look closer. And, I propose the possibility that Napoleon Bonaparte was able to see across time and space to his own future, the future of Europe, general events, and he did it from the coffer, the box in the King's Chamber, which people, I think, mistakenly call the sarcophagus. You could look at Longfellow's tomb and say, oh, there's kind of a resemblance between his tomb and the alleged sarcophagus in the King's Chamber. Now, I argue in the Esoteric Napoleon that that the mange point, of the Great Pyramid is the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber. What is the mange point? It's well known to folks who are students of geometry, right? Advanced geometry, of which Gaspard Monge is considered, one of the founders and godfathers of geometry. And the mange point is named after him because it's a result of his work. And the mange point is where multiple dimensional planes intersect with each other. That one point where they all intersect, that's the mange point. And I argue in Esoteric Napoleon that at the mange point, the human consciousness can tap into multiple dimensions and see across them. So voila. Okay. If Napoleon did that, if that can be done in the mange point of the Great Pyramid, that sarcophagus, was this the method which Charles Howard Johnson was able to look through time? Did Charles Howard Johnson understand this interdimensional concept of the Monge point? We would have to know more about Charles Howard Johnson than we do. There's very little known about him. He controlled the narrative about himself in his own lifetime. And even colleagues that were respected colleagues in New York that knew him in New York that respected him greatly, even they, you go back and look at the record, they really didn't know that much about him. He claimed to have gone to school in Cincinnati and all this stuff, but that was just what he said. So again, the human interface, okay, is our consciousness. I think Napoleon did it in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. I suggest, that it's worth considering that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, he might have done it. He did something. I haven't been able yet to pinpoint what I think he actually did, but there's something about his tomb, his sarcophagus, essentially, that stone box that we're told that he's in. There's the family crypt, which the family disappeared from. So with the human consciousness, then, being an interface at, in Napoleon's case, the Monge point in the pyramid, therefore, we can better understand Charles Howard Johnson and what, how he might have been able to see through time. We can understand what happens to us in our sleeping state, okay, when we're dreaming. Are we essentially tapping into the Monge point of our immediate surroundings? What I've never done is analyze. I've never really noted where I was sleeping when I had these particular dreams I'm talking about, where I think I'm in another dimension, another life. Now I wonder, I need to, if I should analyze the shape of the room, the layout of the walls of the room that I was in, and see if it meets the criteria for having a so-called Monge point. In other words, if I sleep in this place and never have those dreams, is it because there's not a connecting port for my consciousness to interface with? The port being the Monge point. Call it the Monge port if we want. But if I slept in, some other particular place, maybe in a particular angular configuration. I mean, think about it. There's people that always want their head facing, at a certain direction. Some people say north, others like it to the south or whatever. What if that factors in to us being able to consciously tap into that other place that we're actually, our consciousness is living in another body while this body sleeps? It's very, very intriguing. And when you consider the questions about Longfellow's tomb in relation to all of this, and when you look at Burroughs, remember what I keep telling you guys? Don't ignore the fiction. You know what? Go ahead, certainty fetishists, materialists, pedantics, sticks in the mud, Go ahead and ignore the fiction. You're missing out on important data, but go ahead. Anyway, Burroughs, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and the John Carter issue. What did he know? I'm going to jump back into the Burroughs work and read the description of the tomb that John Carter is supposed to be in, because if it is the right geometrical type of shape, figure, or whatever, that it could literally qualify to have a mange point, maybe where John Carter is laid out in that is the mange point of his tomb. Richard Collier, the character in Matheson's Somewhere in Time, he physically in the story goes back in time, but what happens? He's yanked back because of the anachronistic penny. He has a penny from 1980 or 79 or whatever it is, unfortunately. And that is the thing that sucks him back to his own time. Okay. But where does he finally meet Elise McKenna? When he dies. In the story, okay, in the novel, his brother, who is narrating, telling us the story that was told to him by his brother, Richard, he says, I like to think that he's out there somewhere, with Elise somewhere in time, that kind of thing. And in the film, they make it more obvious. Now, remember, Matheson had a hand in writing the film. Okay, he's in the film. In fact, Sechery's analysis of the film yields a lot of interesting data that suggests what Matheson might have known and learned about time travel. But he shows that Collier is able, at will, much more easily, at the point that he dies. See, I think this is Matheson telling us something about what I'm saying about Hecate. When you die, you got your options. So I think that, yes, Charles Howard Johnson. Yeah. When you think of Somewhere in Time, Richard Collier falls in love with an actress of the past, right? And travels back in time to be with her. Charles Howard Johnson. Oh, and then he's in his hotel, when he dies, and ostensibly, journeys through time to be with her. Charles Howard Johnson lived in a hotel, was married to an actress. She didn't look anything like Elise McKenna, but that's beside the point. Married to an actress, and the report is that he died right there of brain fever, a stroke or whatever you could say, but brain fever. I haven't yet found where he's buried. I haven't found any comment about, okay, he died and he was laid to rest in such and such town, blah, blah, blah. Not a word. Not a word about the disposition of his remains. We're just told that he died in his residential apartment in a hotel. Did Matheson know about Charles Howard Johnson? Was Johnson from our time? Did he go back to the 19th century, influence Ingersoll Lockwood in the writing of the Baron Trump books, and then return to our time? His time? I don't know. It's fun to speculate. It's definitely a mystery until it's not. But currently it is still a mystery. And it's just too interesting that the similarities between Somewhere in Time and the life of Charles Howard Johnson, and for that matter, Finney's story, Time and Again, because that takes place in New York, in the 19th century, late 19th century. Finney and Matheson, as I've said before, they knew something. They learned something that they weren't openly explaining. They put it in their fiction for, people to decide for themselves. It could be that when we die, we could go from time to time, either back in our own lives that we just lived, that just ended, or into some past life, into one of our past bodies. Maybe this explains the stories of the guy who just seemed to make all the right moves, invest in the right things, right? Know where to dig the gold mine, know which technology to invest in during the Industrial Revolution. Just like Biff in Back to the Future, find out just who to, bet on in what game, that kind of thing. Maybe that explains people like that. Maybe, well, I think other things explain Nikola Tesla, but you never know. Maybe that too. I do think that when we do this, though, just like I think with reincarnation, there is a veil of amnesia, is how I have put it for years. I think when we do this time travel at point of death, I think there's a murkiness. We're not quite sure. We're not consciously aware that we did this. In other words, let's say I did this. Hypothetical, okay? Hypothetical here. We have fun with hypotheticals here at the Walter Bosley channel. Let's say if I did this. When I woke up that morning in December of 79, and, we're looking at my hands and was walking through the house. Oh, there's my mom. Maybe I was surprised to see them because, well, my dad's been dead since 2008. So I'll be 61 later this year, this time around. And, so maybe I was surprised at seeing my dad because, last time around, by the time I was 61, again, he was dead. So it's like, oh, there's my dad. Or, oh, there's my mom. When I left, she was 90 something. Now, okay, she's a lot younger. There's my sisters. Oh wow, we're all younger. Oh, there's my dog that's alive again. Uh-oh, how'd I do this? I think that the process of doing it, there's a murkiness. I didn't wake up and go, oh, I did it. I traveled through time. Here I am, my 61-year-old self back in my 16-year-old body. Oh, the fun I'm going to have. No, it's, something extraordinary happened. That there's something weird going on. You're aware that, okay, what the F? Something happened here, but I can't pinpoint what it was. And then it takes years. One thing my uncle told me was that he said, one day you're going to figure out what you did. What I did. And this was during followed a discussion having to do with time and dimension and these things. And he said, one of these days, you're going to figure out what you did. And I think the figuring out of what I did that he was referring to was involved with the discussions with Sechery. And part of it is the data in those letters. And coming to the idea that, oh, wait a minute, I was 61. I jump back into my own timeline, the Hecate thing, the triple. Okay. Could that be the figuring out? And again, don't get me wrong. I think every single one of us is capable of doing this. I am nothing special. People who do this, in the doing of this, I do not believe they're special, because I think every single one of us can do this same thing. Okay. So now we get to, again, that place we go to after what we call death. We've talked about, you know, people have wondered if UFOs and the occupants of UFOs have to do with, moving through time and dimension. Well, as we've talked about here on the Walter Bosley channel with Joshua Cutchin and others, there's the famous, thing that Ann Strieber said to Whitley, that um, I think these UFOs have something to do with what we call death. And maybe, you know, maybe she was on to, the same general thing, that I'm talking about here. That there are these others who, there are this means or what have you of traversing across time and space, and maybe um, maybe these things are from the other side, from the land of the dead. Um, Again, there's a murkiness here. Why is there the murkiness? Why do I think there's this murkiness in place? Why do I think there's a veil of amnesia, so to speak, on your psyche when you reincarnate? Well, I think it's for a very simple reason. Life is a precious thing. It's a very special experience. We are supposed to pay attention to what we're doing while we're doing it. We're supposed to pay attention to the life we're living as we live it, because we get value out of that. We learn things, we earn things as far as knowledge and such. And if we're going to go through this experience, it requires focus and concentration. Now, it also requires commitment. If we were aware, consciously aware, and knew for certain that we're going to reincarnate, that we can, um, I don't think people would be taking their lives as seriously. I think there would be a lot of recklessness. I think there'd be a lot more self-harm too, because the minute somebody would have a really hard time in life, they'd say, screw this, I'm just going to start over. You follow me? And we're not supposed to do that. We are supposed to experience. There's a reason that we want to cling to life for the most part. Um, that we consider life precious. It's because it is. And there's something about living in the physical that is unlike that other non-physical existence, to a degree and in a manner that just keeps drawing us back to this existence. I don't think everybody is just stuck on a wheel and they're doing it uh, forced, against their will. They can't get off the wheel. I do think that there's a lot of us who choose to come back. So there must be something very compelling about this life that can seem so screwed up and can suck at times. There must be a compelling difference that drives us to want to come back to this. Jesus. Because we all have those times where it's like, damn, why am I here? Right? What is this all about? So there's something I think that is revealed to us. People have said it for ages and ages. Some people interpret it to be, a religious thing that they learn, and there's various possibilities. But yet, people will choose to come back. I find that really interesting. particularly when you consider the under this particular hypothesis, right? I could be wrong, and if me being wrong could answer the questions that I'm left with in this discussion, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we don't have the choice, or maybe our only choice are those three. Right? You either go back and relive the one you just lived, which you did it imperfectly. You could do it better, or you stay here in the land of the dead, or you go on to the next life. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe those are the spokes of the wheel. It says, okay, you can't get off the wheel. Well, maybe those three things. Remember, Hecate's symbol is the wheel, right? Saint Catherine of the Wheel. Complete fabrication. Saint Catherine of Alexandria never existed. She was just, they stole Hypatia of Alexandria's biography, threw in a bunch of typical Christian crap, and, called her Saint Catherine of Alexandria because they knew they couldn't stop Hecate veneration, and they really didn't want to. So, they did this syncretic, I said Christian crap, churchianity crap. Okay. So again, death. Many people fear it for a variety of reasons. But what if that's the case? What if those are the only choices you get? What if staying in the land of the dead appears too spooky to a lot of people? There is Ambrose Bierce, who wrote An Inhabitant of Carcosa, which is where the great place name Carcosa comes from, which Robert W. Chambers used to great effect in his The King in Yellow masterpiece, which true detective fans, you'll recognize that. In the story An Inhabitant of Carcosa, a man wakes up and essentially he's dead, but he's seeing that the grass has grown tall, the weeds have grown over where what he realizes his gravesite is at, and there's people there that he can't even communicate with, and he's trying. There's Carcosa, the city that is in the story. Ambrose Bierce, as we know, disappeared in 1913, never to be heard from again. And most of his writings were of the bizarre, weird fiction genre. You could say that he's the American writer that really was the first American writer dedicated to weird fiction. Now, yes, there was Edgar Allan Poe. So I argue that after Poe, Bierce takes up the torch of this genre. And I say, I talk about it in this book here, that Bierce really invented what we refer to as the Twilight Zone type of story. Okay. But the majority of his writings were this weird fiction kind of stuff, not the Civil War reminiscences and writings, and not the Devil's Dictionary stuff, not even his article. It was the weird stuff. I know. I studied the man and his writings when I worked on this book. And he was fascinated with strange disappearances, right? He was fascinated with interdimensional tales of interdimensional stuff and mysteries. And yet we have no idea what happened to him, where he died. I argue in the book that he made it to South America. Did he make it to some structure, some pyramid down there in the Brazilian jungle, say, where there is a Monge point? Who knows? It's delicious to think about, because he did leave us with such a mystery, and his death is a mystery. The death of Charles Howard Johnson is a mystery. The um, uh, uh, it, 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 there seems to be something going on with this issue of death and dimension and time. And I think that's because in where we go after we die is either outside of time, right? Or in that spot where it can see farther down the road to either direction, to paraphrase Alan Bates's character in the Mothman Prophecies. And we have John Keel talking about Mothman and Indrid Cold and the weird references to time in dimension there. This is the mystery that fascinates me the most, is time phenomena, time. And that's just because my own personal experiences, it just keeps coming back. It just keeps pointing to that. Interdimensionality, time, what the hell? You know? Was my uncle right? Did I figure out what I did? I don't know. I don't know the actual answer to that. I know I've been rambling on for 1 hour and 42 minutes. And I will talk about this again. This will come back up. This is by no means the end of my ramblings about this. This stuff has been in my mind and in my notes for years. Okay. More than a decade. And I got those letters from Seshari. I wonder if I have them. I don't think I have them with me. There was a time when I kept them with me in the briefcase that I had because I didn't want to lose them. But now I have them secure and safe. And I think they have some very, very important data in them that down the road, maybe I'll have Sesh on and we'll talk about it openly sometime. I would love to do that. I would love to have him on and we just read those letters to you. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to try to talk him in on that. But I'm telling you, don't ignore the fiction. Okay? Check out this book. I will see you in time. It's one of my best things I've written. Okay? Other people tell me that too. So, Charles Howard Johnson, we talk about in more detail than I've done here tonight what we think about Charles Howard Johnson and what he knew about seeing the future and how. Okay? And I'm telling you, Lockwood really is a mystery where this stuff is concerned. And it has, and when you think of Lockwood, don't get locked into the Trump thing, okay? Because there's so much more to the mystery than that. Destination Carcosa, give it a chance, give it a look. Okay, so I'm going to, this has been one of my weird in the purple kind of things. I haven't even taken a sip of my water. Okay. I'm going to go to the live chat and folks, remember, hit those like buttons and please subscribe. And we do have the super chats now and stuff like that. So now, remember, folks, please, all caps if you want me to address your comment or answer your question. All capital letters, please. And I'm going to the live chat. And Crypto Alchemist says there has to be a forever time. I agree. I do agree. I think, and that's where the land of the dead is. Karen Degenhart asked, do you have any clue as to how your mentor knew these things? He's dead, or is he? I think that he was someone like me, that he had experiences, he had glimpses, and he had a mentor that guided him, and he was exposed to these things and he learned these things. Now, in what capacity? He was drafted into the Army in like around 1950, I think. I'd have to look. And he went into Special Forces. Well, he went in the 101st Airborne, then Special Forces, and then he got kind of handpicked for the intelligence community. And that was around the time that we are told the mysterious Collins elite came into being. I think my uncle was, this is my speculation, I have suspected for some years now that he was one of these military intel agents who was of whatever the Collins elite was and called themselves. I think he was probably one of them. You know, he's been dead a few years now. He revealed to me who his mentor was. He used to just refer to him as the old man. And then in 99, he told me who the old man was. And I've never really said that publicly, but I will now. It was James Jesus Angleton, Director of Counterintelligence of the CIA. Angleton was my uncle's mentor, my mentor's mentor. So enjoy that little tidbit.
Wow.
Yes, thank you, Johnny Side, for reminding them. Oh, Megalith. Okay. Glad you could stick it out this long. We'll see you next time. Crypto Alchemist says the land of the ancestors, time of forever 100. The number 100, of course, is associated with Hecate as well, right? Did you know that? And she's venerated often in a set of 250s, but she's the triple goddess, so the number 3 is her prime number, but 100 is also connected to her. So think about that. Thank you, Renee, Mrs. Johnny Side. Even though that wasn't in all caps, I will take compliments in any font size. What have we here? Philip Blair, quoting, instead of dying, Kepler has gained the ability to roam from one body to another, to jump into another person's skin and see through their eyes alive. Touched by Claire North. Oh, Philip, we got to talk. Interesting that you would mention the quote associating Kepler with this, because in 2006, it was while thinking about Kepler, some of his work, that it came to me that time is spherical, not circular. So Kepler's ideas had a lot to do with my hypotheses and speculations. So I want to learn more about what you just quoted. Crypto alchemists. Ah, thank you, Crypto. Yes. Yep. Asks, can a UFO experience be the completion of a time loop, a version of self on UFO looking at old self? What? Why not? Why not? Right? Philip Blair asks if I've read Touch by Claire North. No, but I'm going to. I've never heard of this. I need to read this. Thank you. Thank you. This is why we talk about these things, right? This is why we have a live chat. D. Dorothy Papineau asks, Walter, the title of your book, what is it? Which book are you referring to, D. Dorothy Papineau? You mean the time travel novel, I Will See You in Time? Or do you mean The Mystery of Ingersoll Lockwood? Or perhaps Ambrose Bierce, Destination Carcosa? So occasionally I have to do these shows where I just get on here and let myself go into the purple with this stuff, because I like to give you insight into what it's like for me. Usually, this is the headspace that I've spent a lot of time in, and yeah. Crypto Alchemist. Ooh, I love spherical time for our third dimensional perspectives, and then is forever time Betoroid or Vesica Piscis. Vesica Piscis. Could be. I don't know. You've probably thought more on what you're talking about specifically, your perspective, than I have. So you would know, you'd be able to describe what you're talking about there better than I could. Yes, D. Dorothy, it's I Will See You in Time is the title of my time travel novel. And yeah, I borrowed it from Mothman Prophecies. Philip Blair. Kepler is the name she gave her main character, so I expect she put thought into the name. Okay, Touch by Claire North. Malia, we've got to read that book. She's in the other room. We got to read this book, Touch by Claire North. We've got to read a book titled Touch by an author named Claire North. Okay. Philip Blair told me about it, and we got to read this.
Yeah, is that the one he sent to my Facebook?
Philip, is that the one that you sent to Malia's Facebook? Yep asks, how would you describe the feeling of awestruck? I think everybody's experienced being awestruck, but our descriptions of it would be subjective, right? To me, awestruck is enlightenment, comes with enlightenment. For me, yeah, it's just it's seeing what you didn't see before, and at the same time realizing the impact of what it is you're seeing. That's awestruck. Philip Blair. It's not a spoiler. The main character is murdered, but then ends up looking down at his body through the killer's eyes. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I think shows like this and me just kind of jumping in the boat and taking you down the stream with me. These are the reasons why I need to talk Sesh. He might be watching this one. I need to really convince him, Sesh, that I think it's time we talk about these letters. Was there a body sensation with awestruck? The best one I can describe is, get this, it's a lightness, a physical lightness. Now, isn't it weird that they say that with, as you become a more illuminated being, you become, there's like a weightlessness or I don't know, but it feels like you're defying gravity in a moment of being awestruck. So maybe one key to defying gravity could be this experience of what we call awestruck. And if that's in a moment of clarity, or a moment of seeing through the veil or what you didn't see before, but upon seeing it, you have full understanding and grasp of it. If you could, maybe you could induce this lightness of being, so to speak, a phrase that's out there. But that's the nearest that I can describe it or answer that question. Oh, Philip says that's a different book. D. Dorothy says, don't scare Sesh off. No, if I haven't scared him off all these years, he won't be. Okay. Crypto says, my experience for that yet keeping it together was the time I got to have a drink with famed Kajai farmer president of Afghanistan. Wait, Karzai? Hamid Karzai? In Montreal while I was staying there with Wu-Tang. Kajai or Karzai? Was that a misspelling or did you spell that correctly? Because when I worked in Afghanistan like 4 times, and the compound we stayed in was right across the street from Karzai's compound. And I remember one night the radical Taliban nuts were fired. They fired a rocket at Karzai's compound, and this particular rocket landed in that street. And our security chief came in with this towel, and in the piece of the towel was the still warm chunk of twisted metal that was part of the debris of this rocket. And we were like looking at it going, ooh, wow, look at that. And we had heard the rocket impact and explode right outside the building. We were in the tally bar having a couple of Guinness stouts, and we just boom, like, oh shoot, are we gonna have to egress out of here? But that was the end of that show. But anyway, that was right next door to Karzai's compound. Philip Blair says, I sent Malia something that might upset the algorithm if we talk about it here. Okay, we won't talk about it here. Oh, no, you're right. That would be Karzai, because I was in Afghanistan between 2002 and 2005. Okay, and that's, already, 20 years ago in the teens or whatever, 15 to 16 years ago. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say Karzai is who you were talking about. The tally bar. Any more questions? Any more comments? I really appreciate the turnout tonight. Good number of people watching, a great number of people in the live chat tonight for this unexpected type of episode. I figured some of you were, not as enthused about Wednesday night's episode, which I am. I'm going to be having Max on again sometime too. You guys know I'm a model builder. I love building models. I like talking about it too. Yep asks, do you think a new religion will take hold that incorporates time travel or UFOs? I maybe perhaps, definitely something with UFOs, because I think that's what we're being pushed towards with all this, crap that goes on these days with UFOs and UFO lore in the UFO community. I mean, you already have people who get angry um, when you question certain UFO prophets like Jeremy Corbell or Lazar. Ufology now, the ufology community has its saints, right? Its prophets and its saints. And how dare you question their scripture, their dogma? Okay. This is exactly a religion. The ufology community, and since 2017 in particular, somebody has dragged in the zealots. Okay, every religion has its zealots, and we've seen the biggest number of zealots, aggressive, hostile type of zealotry in ufology that we've ever seen, and that's been since 2017. I mean, I made a comment today on my Facebook about this uh, uh, jellyfish UFO. It's folks, it's probably just a, a bunch of balloons tied together that got lost in the wind. And oh my, it kind of irritated a couple of true believers. And how dare I question Jeremy Corbell? Well, I'll question him any goddamn day of the week. Okay. You guys know what I think of what he does. But that right there, it's just it is a religion. They totally act. There's scripture, verse, dogma. There's the zealots to keep everybody in line. You won't speak out against this. Okay, so yeah, it's unfortunately, there is kind of a religion, being forced upon us through the UFO community. Crypto Alchemist says it was at the Montreal Hilton. Cars, I was at the bar alone with 2 armed guards at the entrance. One of the best conversations I ever had. He said Russia treated Afghanistan much better than the USA. That's interesting. Johnny Side, I guess, is asking me to give a quick thought on True Detective Season 4, Episode 1. Well, folks, if you haven't seen the first episode yet, or even if you have and you missed it, the first image is the black screen with a quote, and that quote is from, I think the name is Hildegard Castaigne. That is a character in Robert W. Chambers' The King in Yellow. That's a quote from The King in Yellow. And remember, season 1 was the Yellow King and Carcosa symbolism, right? So that's interesting. Here's what I think. The first episode did its job. I definitely want to watch the second episode. Does it have flaws? You betcha. It's nowhere near on the level of The Great and Hallowed Season 1. But it's trying. And from what I've heard of reviews people have read, is that this season is not just Scooby-Dooing us with weirdness and, dare I say, paranormal. Apparently it goes there. So hopefully, now here's the thing about what I'm seeing with season 4. Go back and watch season 1 again and pay attention to certain, moments and scenes. Go back to when Rust and Marty go and talk to the lady who used to be one of the domestic employees of the Tuttle, the Reverend Tuttle household. Okay, the lady who lives with her niece and might have some dementia or whatever. Listen to what she says and how she reacts to Rust and their conversation, and when she sees the little wood thing. And that's just one moment. But there are moments that, as you know, really are, hint at, strongly suggest the paranormal. Okay, even though the way the story was told and the way the action unfolds and stuff, it's a very down to earth thing. But remember Rust's visions. Now, yes, we know that he had a drug issue, and so that can be explained away. Or did that drug issue tap him into another dimension? So basically, Johnny Side, season 4, much to my surprise, I'm still not totally embracing it because seasons 2 and 3 pissed me off. But so far, so good. We'll see. Remember, season 2 started off with a very intriguing first episode and then just ignored the original direction with the rest of season 2. And then number 3, we were completely friggin', Scooby-Dooed, And then when the creator himself says, well, the season 3 was never really about the case. It was just about a man's relationship with his wife. If I want that, I'll watch a damn soap opera in the afternoon, okay? Or I'll watch Lifetime. I don't watch True Detective for, marriage drama. I'm just saying. D. Dorothy says, Max has great stories. Yes, he does. Check out his live stream. It's on Saturdays at Max's Models, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. East Coast time. Yep, propaganda. Crypto Alchemist says, I agree 100%. It's such a joke. I have footage of them under the water, but you can't see it. Yeah, right? Philip Blair says, I can say it's about hate providing an opening to demonic possession as a theory about a historical figure by a man with rare out-of-print books, one book written in urgency. Okay, check it out. Crypto Alchemist says, I agree certain drug experience create portals to other realms, but one has to be careful with that. I am not an advocate of, just willy-nilly playing around with psychedelics because, it's definitely going to open another portal. It can also just carry you right into self-destruction, and insanity and all sorts of other things. So, I say be very, very careful with that. Look, I believe that there are other ways to tap into these portals than drugs, than substances. Totally. I think that's what we learned from Matheson in Somewhere in Time, what we learned from Jack Finney in Time and Again, what we learned from Edgar Rice Burroughs and John Carter of Mars. Philip Blair, a book written to alert people, only published once during a minute. Okay, that's interesting. So, okay, folks, good Lord, I've been going on for 2 hours and 8 minutes, and I've got models to paint, strange things to read, movies and obscure TV shows to make Malia watch. And wait. Where did we go here? Crypto Alchemist says body snatchers and zombification and psychoses can all be side effects, no doubt about it. Never chase the dragon. Johnny Side finally watched the 9th configuration, really liked it. Go back and watch the discussion now that Todd and I think Malia, Todd, Malia, and I had. And I think you'll enjoy that, Johnny Side. So I think that it's time to make some popcorn and put on some Star Trek, the original series, and maybe I'll make Malia watch like the old Thunderbirds, the puppet animation Thunderbirds show. Or maybe I'll subject her to a binge marathon of Bonanza. Maybe she'd like that. Anyway, okay, you can tell I've pulled out of the purple stream. I've gotten out of the boat on the weird river of strangeness, and it's time to go. So you guys have a good weekend, and this Wednesday on the schedule coming up, the 24th of January, this very month, is Joseph Farrell. Okay, for another trans-temporal crypto, or maybe something else. You'll know when it's announced, when it's posted, but hopefully the weather will permit Joseph Farrell to join us on Wednesday night. And if not, I got another substitute topic lined up for you. Either way, come back to the Walter Bosley channel on Wednesday night for that. But tomorrow night, Malia and I will be here. And we're looking at probably 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. EST. So the Walter and Malia, the Malia and Walter live stream will be here tomorrow. Okay, so thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow night with Malia and me here at the Walter Bosley channel. So have a good night.